Once we are aware that we have a broader competition than we thought and that there is potential demand out there that we can reach out to, the question is, how can we reach out to that potential demand? So let's start from the classical segmentation structure as we know it. And the work that we have to do is to drill down that macro segment into micro segments once we define our specific target that we want to seize with our joint revenue and marketing efforts. In the specific case we are displaying, we analyze that the kind of demand that we want to target is leisure demand, individual, non-negotiated. Among this segmentation, we still deep dive a little bit on the micro targets, and we understood that there are in the non-negotiated leisure individual demand 3 different targets: couples, solo, and family. For the scope of the exercise, we will focus our attention on the family target.
As a matter of fact, the general and most generic differentiation or segmentation when it comes to leisure, business, individual, and group from a marketing perspective is not necessarily useful. Or let's put it this way, is not necessarily detailed enough for us to run properly and effective marketing campaign. So therefore, as Silvia said, let's just focus on the one specific target, which in this case is family.
When we have to understand a specific target behavior, there are some areas that we need to focus our attention on that help us understand what are their specific booking patterns and behaviors and how are they evolving in this new life. Here, we will highlight some of the core different aspects that we need to deep dive our attention on, specifically geo-source, channel of origin, length of stay, booking window, product type, and interest. For each of the macro areas, we will show you now how it's important to share data and work together with all the commercial departments involved, whether it's revenue, marketing, sales, and digital, in order to have a perfect picture of this new segment and target behaviors. So let's start from geo-source. What I can bring on the table from a revenue management standpoint is data on the statistical and on the book data. So we might want to look at the past, but at the same time, we need to be aware of the changing and evolving trends that are happening right now and are changing compared to the past in the future. Another important thing in terms of geo-sources is analyzing the searches from the booking engine. So if you're using a CRS or a booking engine, you have very rich data you can extract from that give you insights on who are the customers booking at your hotel, from which countries of origin, which length of stay, and a lot of useful information you can use in order to define the geo-source behavior and how this is adapting to this new life. Then another important data I can use is holidays, data and travel restrictions. As we know, it's now more important than ever to understand how the travel restrictions are lifting, borders opening, closing, but also if there are any changes in the holidays behavior. It might happen, for example, that some countries that used to travel during the school holidays in the past are now completely changing their behavior and, for example, switching to short-term bookings and weekend only.
The very first step when we talk about bringing together marketing, revenue, and distribution is about bringing together first production data and demand data. For example, we might want to see the production when it comes to countries, so which countries drive more revenues and which countries drive more bookings. But at the same time, we might want to look, for example, which countries drive more traffic. And therefore, what's their conversion rate? Because, for example, we might want to have, or we might have a situation where we have just, let's say, 100 bookings coming from, again, let's say, Australia, but 100 bookings coming from 100 requests is a totally different thing. So that the same number of bookings coming out of 10,000 requests. That's what the conversion rate by country is for. At the same time, and just as an example, we want to see which dates did these people look for. So again, taking Australia as an example, people coming from Australia, for which dates are they looking for? Because events or holiday seasons they might have might be totally different than, for example, holiday season people in other countries have. At the same time, we might want to see and we might want to know how big our audience is going to be. Because if we want to run a marketing campaign, we have to start with a budget. Depending on the budget, we also need to know how much people we're going to reach out to. And that's what Facebook, for example, is extremely useful for, because depending on the countries, we might want to see a specific targets, in this case, families. We might want to see, for example, families, again, in Australia, maybe families in Switzerland, how many people we can count and we can potentially reach out to, considering also and relating also this amount of people with the budget that we have in our hands. And therefore, based on all this information, we can decide, okay, how much budget we might want to put in the campaign and which countries we might want to target as opposed to other countries that we might want to leave out from our targeting.
When we talk about channel of distribution, we have to be aware of the booking preferences of each specific target. So in the specific case of the family market, we need to know where this family market used to book from in the past compared to now. So our statistical and on the book data gives us this kind of information. So this is very much linked to what we already saw on the GeoSource. We pretty much do the same considerations, but from a different perspective. On the channel distribution, it's important to understand, besides the channel that they're booking from, also the contribution per period and day of the week. As I said before, holidays and travel patterns might change. So this might change also based on the distribution channel. You might have some channels that tend to have short-term bookings compared to other channels where, for example, your bookings tend to arrive quite more in advance. So understanding how are the different behaviors based on the channel of booking may give you interesting insights also on the strategy per channel. As you might be aware that some channels might run promotions or campaigns and some intermediaries might target your same target at the same time. So you have to know when this happens, as this might potentially be shifting demand from your own direct channel to the intermediaries or vice versa.
When we talk about channel, it is absolutely of paramount importance to know which channel they use to make the reservation, but it's even more important to know which channels these people, so these target use before making a reservation, because we all know that only 3% of the people getting in contact and first see a hotel website, for example, for the first time are willing and ready to book. So what about the remaining 97%? Where do they spend the remaining time? Where do they spend the rest of the money? Which other website do they visit? So this is where we mean and what we mean by channels in terms of marketing, let's put it this way. So for example, what kind of websites do they visit? What kind of, for example, Facebook page do they visit? What kind of other pages or other social media pages do they visit and they spend most of their time with? This is also part of the channels because recreating the booking journey will allow us to better understand and to better market to those people in the most appropriate way.
Understanding the length of stay of your segment targets, it's very important for you to define the right promotion. As you might end up, if you don't consider this element, you might end up discounting when actually your final goal would be to target a specific segment, but at the same time create a win-win situation for you and the guest, meaning you bring additional revenue based also on the length of stay you decide to promote. So when we're looking at a specific segment behavior, we have to understand what's the average length of stay per period. So the question is, right now, my family target market, how long is staying at my hotel, and how is this length of stay differing from the other segments? As this helps me understand the evolution of the booking behavior and define the right promotion in order to get the best returns. Besides this data that you can easily find on your on-the-books data compared to the past and compared to the other segments, another important information that you might want to have is the length of stay per booking search. Again, this is related to something we already discussed about in the GeoSource chapter, where I say it's very useful to look at the searches on your booking engine or CRS. So these searches give you also important insights in regards not only to the country of origin, but also to the length of stay. So when are those searches happening, for which length of stay compared to my average length of stay or to the other segments?
So you see how everything is connected, because, for example, from a marketing perspective, I'm definitely interested in knowing in knowing how much or how long this target market, meaning families, used to stay at our hotel. And not only that, but I also want to know for how long, or at least what's the average length of stay do they search the most, not necessarily book. And here we connect to, again, the first and most important metric we already mentioned before when we talk about the geolocation, meaning the conversion rate. Conversion rate, and the importance of the conversion rate is that it's never only based on the production, but it also considers the research, meaning the actual demand. And for example, if I see that families convert a lot better when it comes to searches for 3 nights, from a marketing perspective, I might consider this information to create a campaign, meaning an offer, a value proposition that is likely based on 3 nights stay rather than 2 nights stay or 5 nights stay or 7 nights stay, because more likely my marketing campaign is going to be more successful. Other than that, we may also want to look into previous data in terms of previous campaign that we might have already run through different channels, so through Google, through Facebook, or whatsoever. So what was the performance in terms of click-through rate, so CTR, and all other marketing metrics based on the length of stay, so length of stay 2, length of stay 3, length of stay 4, 5, 6, and 7, and so on and so forth. Booking window, you see now that the schema, so the visual representation of all the information that we might want to include when it comes to this metric, this dimension booking window, are exactly the same as we have seen before with the length of stay, or at least most of them are the same. So booking window per booking search, for example, the conversion rate per booking window, or the results of previous campaign based on the booking window. So you see, it's more or less the same, but again, let's take this specific dimension in a real case study. If I want to run a campaign again for this kind of target, meaning families, I want to know how much in advance do they usually book. And not only that, but how much in advance do they start searching and do they start interesting when it comes to hotels.
Booking windows is extremely critical, and together with length of stay is one of those metrics that hotels make wrong many times. Especially in this specific moment where booking windows are shrinking and completely changing compared to the past, is of paramount importance that we understand per segment, per target, how is the customer segment changing and evolving. As if we make it wrong on the booking window, we make it wrong on our strategy, we make the incorrect, our pricing is not correct, and our return is not there. So now more than ever, it's important to measure how this is evolving and changing, and target and go out with promotion and tactical activities at the precise exact time. We already started talking about pricing and the importance of understanding length of stay and booking window in order also to get the pricing right at the right time. However, product type is another kind of element we really need to understand. So per each segment and target, understand what is the product type preference. So what kind of rates is specific, for example, family, in this case, family segment preferring to book. If it's a flexible rate, a packaged rate, what kind of inclusions are they looking for? Maybe if you're targeting a specific geo segment that may reach your hotel by car, they might look for free parking as an added value, or having breakfast included. What kind of cancellation policy are they looking for? Even if it's like a short-term booking window, are they still looking for flexible rate, or are they maybe willing to pay some deposits or be willing to prepay? Why not in the future, as their stay will be coming in the next 7 days? So also understanding your kind of product type will help you make the right decision when it comes to what kind of promotion do I have to work with together with marketing in order to create something appealing that can really attract that potential demand.
You see, a recurrent thing that is included and I mentioned in each and every of these areas, including product type, is I shorten with CVR, which stands for conversion rate. In this case, it's conversion rate by room and rate code, because yes, we talk about products, meaning a combination of room and a combination of a rate, a specific rate code. Again, you might want to have 10 reservation, 100 reservation, 1,000 reservation for a specific product, but out of how many visitors, out of how many tentatives, how many times that product has been viewed. This is extremely important to know because we need to understand how much appealing each and every product that we have is. And the appealing is not defined by the number of reservations, but by the combination of views and the reservations. Another thing is about interest. So now in this case, we're going to cover both product type and interest. And you see that I also put a line between product type and what I underline underneath the page sites, products that they like. Because when we talk about products, most times we simply refer to rooms and rates. But products is also whatever we might want to offer in terms of value proposition. If we see that, for example, target families are interested in specific information, in specific products that may be, for example, specific destinations, specific point of interest, or specific services within a certain destination, that is also something that we might want to check, or that we can definitely check beforehand, because we might want to come up not only with just a proposition in terms of rooms and rates, but with something more appealing in terms of packaging, if we want to call it that way.
With this example, we just wanted to bring to your attention the fact that you cannot miss out on any of those at least core elements we just highlighted. And we just wanted to show you how it's important to work together with all the departments involved when you are creating a specific action on segmentation or targeting, in order to get all the useful information you need to have to make the right choices.
As Silvia said, that this was just an example, a bunch of data or a combination of data sets that we can take into account in order to drive more leads and more prospects. Now the battlefield becomes distribution, and distribution is really the battlefield, because if we don't handle this seriously, everything that we do in terms of revenue marketing contribution in order to drive more leads might become marketing spent to the advantage of intermediaries. In other words, we might want to be sure that these leads, first of all, turn into customer, and second of all, turn into direct customer. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about in the next lesson.